accept the consent agenda as presented with the understanding of the added addendum at a later date.
We have a first, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Consent agenda approved as presented. We have a special presenter tonight. And Jessica, we appreciate your flexibility because you're slated to be here the previous time, but again, it was such a short agenda, so we thought we'd make better use of our time. So I will turn the floor over to you.
Okay. Should I stand at the
Hey,
podium?
if you like, sure.
I was going to say, since the last time I was here, it's been raining a little bit.
Well, just a little clarity on that. The reason why we did some changes was because we've had some new cameras put in. And so it's just from an optics standpoint, it's a little bit easier for folks for viewing, for the speaker to be down there and for us to be arranged this way. Yes?
Okay.
That explains why you're sitting there in the front.
Oh, that's what you're looking for? Oh, no. No, I've been to this table.
All right, moments before the meeting started, I passed out a hard copy of the water rate analysis. Again, I'm Jessica Lynch. I'm a director with Baker Tilly. I've been working with the city's utilities for some time. I think you may remember me. I was here a few months ago presenting the financial management reports for both of the water utility and the sewage works. And I believe the water rate analysis hadn't been looked at, the water utility, the rates hadn't been looked at in some time, but also another driver of this is that the legislation that was passed eliminating the utility receipts tax, so that's been incorporated into these rates as well. So the first few pages, the top page is a letter, and then the next few pages is the executive summary, and so this goes over the historical information of the water utility. So very similar to information that you've seen in the financial management reports. The financial management reports are a little more detailed, so this is kind of a high level summary of the past 3 years. So just having the cash and investment balances there broken down at the top between your restricted and unrestricted, showing pretty healthy cash balances, but we'll see the impact of future costs of the utility later in the report and how that's impacting these cash balances. Next section under that, just your receipts and disbursements, showing your operating receipts well above the operating disbursements. However, then the next line is your total receipts and disbursements. So any non-operating disbursements, digging into those net operating receipts. So that'd be your debt service, any capital improvements, anything of that nature. So adding to your cash balances in 2019 and 2021, there was a small depletion, almost $7,000 in 2020, but the other 2 years adding to those cash balances. Just some ratios here in the kind of the middle of the page. Your days cash on hand, your debt service coverage. Debt service coverage is pretty healthy, just because there's only the one bond outstanding for the water utility right now, the 2009 bonds. And their outstanding at the end of 2021, the amount outstanding was $137,000. And that amortization schedule, I believe, is on page 7. I'll glance real quickly, but so there was another payment at the beginning of the year, so there's $122,000 outstanding currently. Page 3 just shows that same information, but in a graphical format. If you're more of a visual person, pictures are better than numbers sometimes. This is just showing it in graphical form. So your cash balances, just showing your historical, that first top left graph, the total receipts and disbursements, pretty even in 2019 and 2020. Total disbursements a little lower in 2021. Again, showing that same comparison of operating receipts and disbursements, showing those total operating receipts higher to be able to incorporate any costs of capital and debt service. And then your cash balances by fund here in the lower left. So the water tower fund is that top one in orange, and the depreciation fund, and then your restricted funds are the kind of in the middle there. It's the lighter blue, customer deposits, debt service reserve, and your bond and interest. And then the operating and maintenance is the bottom, the green there. And I believe Jan tries to keep that around that 90,000. There's a requirement in your outstanding bond ordinance that 2 months of operating disbursements are required to be maintained in that fund, and I believe Jan will kind of assess what that balance is and will transfer to the depreciation fund anything above that amount. And then the bottom right, this is your total disbursements for your test year, which was calendar year 2021. So this shows all the different, broken down kind of by percentages in a pie graph, the costs of operating the water utility. So not just the operating costs, but also any of those non-operating costs. So you'll see the yellow, the brightest piece of pie in this graph is your personnel. So that's not just salaries and wages, it's also your FICA, Medicare, health insurance. So that's a little over a third of the costs of the water utility. Then the next highest there is a blue towards the bottom. Purchase power is 11%, or actually it looks like pilot's 15%, so that one's higher, the darker blue. And so what pilot is, that's that payment in lieu of taxes. So just a legal transfer that you're allowed to make from the water utility to the general fund in the amount that's calculated based on if the water utility did pay property taxes, that's the amount they would pay on their capital assets. And then all the other operating costs are kind of just under that 10% amount for the water utility.
Are you afforded any insight as to how such a chart compares to other communities you guys work with?
I will say other communities we work with, personnel usually is about a third. That's pretty consistent around with other communities. And then the rest kind of varies based on, I usually see debt service a lot higher. So the water utility right now is only 3%, so that's pretty good. And then your capital improvements, I usually see that a little higher, but everything else is pretty consistent.
Thank you.
Yeah. Page 4, this is your, and this graph is kind of small because there's a lot of alternatives in here for the different options for the rates. Right now, so it's compared to other communities in the area, and it's based on 4,000 gallons or 533 cubic feet. But so the bars that are yellow are either the current water rates for Union City or the different alternatives that we're going to go through later in this report. So the very first yellow would be if Union City did nothing except for implement the reduction that's required for the elimination of the utility receipts tax. And so that would reduce, for 4,000 gallons, would go from the current rates of $21.96 for 4,000 gallons to $21.73, so about 23 cents less. But then the different alternatives we're showing in here shows about a $5 to $6 increase with the different alternatives, and we'll get into those details further on. So moving to page 5, this shows the test year minimum balances, and I believe we probably had this same graph in the financial management report, so I'll go over this pretty quickly, but just shows again those breakdown of the fund balances that were in the graphs on page 3. And then the minimum balances that are required in there based on your outstanding bond ordinance. So showing while you have the cash balances of almost 757,000, the minimum balances required are the 644,000. So over those minimum balances required by about 112,500. Then page 7 was the amortization schedule. Page 8 is one of the main things for this rate increase and kind of where we divided up the different alternatives. So this is the utility capital improvement plan, where we got input from Jan and Steve, and I believe Monty helped a little bit with this as well. And so just showing the different capital improvements that are anticipated to be needed for the water utility over the next 4 to 5 years. So we see in the next couple years, just that Glee Drive water main replacement, then there's South Water main improvements. The largest of all of these is the South Plant improvements, anticipated to be in 24, 25, and 26 at about 2.5 million. It's spread over 3 years. And then water valve replacements, just an equal 37,000 every year for just as those needs come about each year to have something set aside to be able to complete those replacements. And then an allowance for unforeseen events. What you'll notice is in the middle of this graph, there is a line that says less projects deferred, grant funded, or bond funded. And that amount is 2.7 million. Now that amount can be changed, it can be increased, it can be decreased, but how you change that's gonna impact the effect on your rates. And the reason we assumed that right now, and I know we've been doing that on your financial management reports, but if we had included all of these projects to be cash funded in these 5 years, the rate increase was well over 100%. And it didn't seem like something that would be feasible for the community. So we went ahead and assumed that either they'd be deferred, some other kind of grant funding would be available to help pay for some of these projects, or another bond would be issued to help fund them. That would be paid over the course of 20 years or however long the bond issue would be. So you'll see the average annual capital improvements then that we have included in the rates is this bottom line, the 194,100. Page 9, these are the annual cash operating disbursements, and we adjusted our test year, the calendar year 2021, for any known items that may change. So you'll see some of the larger adjustments here. So that very first line, salaries and wages, adjustment of 52,700. So a lot of these are adjusting up to the 22 budget that was adopted by the council at the end of last year. But then also for salaries and wages, we have added a new employee. So that doesn't mean that a new employee needs to be hired. It's just that the rates would be set at a level to be able to afford that employee should they be added to the staff. So and then FICA tax, the health insurance, that almost 40,000 increase, that is also because of the added benefits, the health insurance, dental insurance for that new employee. And it's assuming family, the premium to family, if they had a full family instead of just single, just a maximum scenario. And then the next largest line is repairs and maintenance, the 55,429. So that's the budget for just your typical repairs and maintenance, but it's also got any periodic maintenance items. So your tank painting, and let's actually turn, it's easier for that one to turn to the page that one's on. So it's on page 11. So that's the adjustment 5. So what's included in the 22 budget for repairs and maintenance is that first 71,000. But then we've added, in conversations with Jan, and I believe she talked to Brad, about some of these things that don't happen every year, but you want to be able to set cash aside so that you'll have it when the time comes, like tank painting. Because tank painting usually is every 15 to 20 years, and it can be up to $200,000 to $300,000. So you want to make sure you have cash on hand to be able to pay for that. So that's the biggest one that you'll see. That's the third of your periodic maintenance. There's an adjustment for the North Tower, the South Tower, and then just cleaning. Every 2 years on both of those towers. And so there was some, considering the repairs and maintenance that were done in the test year, that is taken out, which was 61,100 about. That's taken out, so we're not double counting any repairs and maintenance to get to that 55,400 adjustment. And then there is, just because a lot of these numbers were based on the 2022 budget, there is an adjustment just for unforeseen contingencies and inflations of 3% as well. And then adjustment 9, that's on page 13. That's where you'll see we removed the utility receipts tax that went into effect July 1st of this year. The city, the water utility, had paid $10,400 in our test year in utility receipts tax. So where we bring all this together to look at the rates, so page 14 and then also page 16, there's two different alternatives. Page 14 is the first one, assuming cash funding, so that you would either defer those capital improvements that I mentioned earlier, or you would have other grant funding for those capital improvements. And then, so that shows alternative one, based on that, bringing in the operating disbursements, your current outstanding 2009 bonds, which are outstanding, I believe, until 2029. Yes, January 2029 is the final payment on those. Then your payment in lieu of taxes, we kept that consistent with previous years, the 115,600. And then that's where you'll see in your replacements and improvements, 194,100 cash funding. So if you defer or find grant funding for the remainder of those capital projects, that would result in an increase of 29% across the board. So for the average monthly residential bill of $21.96, that would be an increase of $6.37 there at the bottom, for an approximate average bill of $28.33. The second alternative is based on depreciation expense. So the only line that changes in this second alternative is that fourth or fifth line, it's the fourth line, but the replacements and improvements, just based on the capital assets that are currently outstanding of the water utility, and depreciating those assets at a 2% composite depreciation rate, which is something consistent among water utilities. That depreciation number is $125,800. So something less than even being able to fund what we assumed would be cash funded or deferred or grant funded. And that rate increase would be 20% across the board, or $4.38 for a bill of 533 cubic feet. And those explanations are on page 15. Page 16 shows the bond funding scenario. So if you say there's no way we can defer any of these projects, they need to be done. Those South Main water improvements need to be done in the next 4 to 5 years. We're not sure if we're going to be able to get any grant funding. Let's issue a bond to help fund those projects. So that's what this scenario, these two alternatives are contemplating. So you'll see so all these numbers are the same except for one line item is added. It's the third number down, and it's the proposed waterworks revenue bonds, and it's the amount of $115,300. Now, if these alternatives are decided to move forward with a bond issue, there would be, depending on open market or SRF, if rural development's the route, unfortunately, they don't allow you to wrap your debt. But with that, with your 2009 bonds dropping off in 2029, there is some opportunity there to be able to wrap around that current debt service to keep it level. But you would be adding debt service to increasing the amount of debt service that's paid by the water utility. And so the differences between those alternatives then, funding the full capital improvement plan is alternative one. That rate increase with the bond issue at the 2.7 million, which that can change if you think there's grant funding or ARP funds or some other cash that would be able to fund some of those, and you want to do a lesser dollar amount, that would lower this amount, but just kind of giving you a range between your minimum and your maximum here. But so that rate increase is 47%, which is for the monthly residential bill of 533 cubic feet is an increase of $10 per month, $10.32. And then alternative two, so that's still showing that funding that 2.7 million in projects with a bond issue, but then not funding the full 194,000 with cash. It would fund a lower amount, that appreciation of 125,000 with cash. And that increase is 38% or $8.33. And we did include on both of these scenarios that the ethanol plant receipts would increase at the same rate as all the residential and other customers of the city. We did leave, I know we had, I believe last year we had just looked at Union City, Ohio's rates, so we left those the same at what we had just increased those, I believe, earlier. So those stay the same. And then the last page is just your present rates. We didn't go ahead and do all of the, since there were multiple alternatives and decisions for the council to make, we didn't go ahead and put any of the proposed detailed rates that would go in an ordinance on the last page. But we will do that once, if council wants to see any changes to these alternatives or decides one after having some time to think it over and discuss it, then let us know and we can get those to you. Any questions? Yes.
So can you summarize what would be the one or another or however many of the key reasons that would lead us to approve an increase in the water rates?
Well, I believe the main one is your capital projects. I know from doing the FMRs every year, financial management reports every year, that we have consistently been showing deferring capital projects because the water utility just can't afford to cash fund those projects. And then you can see in this capital improvement plan that South Water main improvements is a large dollar amount, so that's a big driver.
Yeah, I guess that was my question, and it may not necessarily be directed at you, is how urgent are those improvement projects? Like how soon
I do
we
not
need
know
to,
that answer.
Yeah, do those to make a decision on which one.
We can no longer put them off. We're getting ready to add potentially up to 1,000 people working at Workhorse. We're looking at development of the 40 acres of additional industrial park space all the way out to 700. Yeah, 700. Yes. I had to think and make sure that was the right road. Out to 700. We have realistically, and I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but building the housing development, adding new homes, the South Water Plant updates and the South Main Water Loop are intricate in the completion of all of these projects all at the same time. Yeah. The Industrial Park Road extending services into the industrial park, increasing water capabilities and pressures is imperative to the growth and development of the industrial park. So it is legitimately a project that's been in discussion for probably 5 to 6 years or longer. And it's, the last project you guys approved for B&M Steel would have been picked up by the South Main Water Loop project, but it's been delayed and delayed and delayed. And that's one of the reasons why boring under 32 and things like that was just put off, but I couldn't put it off any longer because of B&M's expansion. I had to get them the service. So, we're going to be able to benefit from the boring when we connect the South Water Loop, but the South Water Loop is such a large project, it's going to take a little bit more time, but it needs to be fast-tracked. I mean, we're meeting with consultants now about funding the project.
So is it fair to say that, the purpose of a water rate increase that we would approve is to, we're looking at growth in jobs?
It is absolutely looking at growth. We have to, nobody wants to talk about an increase in anything. I get angry when I go to the grocery and have to pay $2 a gallon more for a gallon of milk. So nobody wants to talk about this, but the reality is we have been stagnant for decades, and the only way we're going to move forward is to grow our community, and we have to grow our community by adding things in the industrial park, building homes. We have to do these things if we plan on growing. We can't continue to offer the same services we're currently offering if we don't grow. The cost of doing business for this city is growing continuously. You know, every one of our employees, every one of our departments is wanting more money for their staffs. You know, we are being beat up on a regular basis. I believe you gentlemen have emails from department heads. This is a bigger conversation. We cannot keep doing what we're doing if we don't grow.
And does any of your numbers take into account any of that growth that he's talking about? You know, the expansion and the greatest.
So we
cities
did not
with
assume any new customers or anything to be conservative. We just assumed the same number of customers that were in 2021 and the revenues from those customers.
Okay.
You know, the other thing I want you guys to understand is everything we're doing costs more.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, when we buy pipe, when we buy, you know, meter pits, when they're all costing considerably more.
Yeah.
You know, it took us literally 9 months to get the 6 fire hydrants in. You know, the cost of installation 9 months later is a lot more than it was 9 months ago. So that too is another reason that this rate increase is something that I don't think we can dodge it anymore.
Yeah, I would say one thing that, you know, when a customer or a citizen, you know, gets their, what they call their water bill, it's not just their water bill. I mean, it's their water bill, their sewage, their trash, it's all on there. And, you know, each of those services, you know, cost different things and potentially increase, you know, over time. So, you know, you have to keep that into mind too, where the water bill itself, you know, it's a smaller part of it. It's only, you know, what are we saying here? On average, $21.96 of that bill that you get on a monthly basis on average. So that's only one piece of that bill that you get. So just keeping that in mind too as we talk about this.
And what was the tax you said that has been canceled?
The utility receipts tax. So prior to this year, in March of this year, the legislation decided to repeal that tax. And what it was 1.4% of your revenues earned from the water utility were paid to the IRS. And so that payment is no longer made.
And that was on average 23 cents per bill? Is that
Yes, yeah. So that was on an average 533 cubic feet bill is 23 cents.
So this can affect our grant opportunity ability too by staying up, you know, by getting our rates increased. A lot of people that have a hard time wrapping their heads around this till you do this a few times, that one of the things they want to know is that you're paying, that you have your rates up to where they're up to date and where they should be before they'll offer grant opportunities. Basically, I always said it as like, we'll help you, but only if you're helping yourselves and preparing for the future, because the idea of the grants is to get you over the hump so that you don't have to have that help continually and you're not constantly,
Right, yeah.
perpetually with your hand out.
Chad and I have been told by the USDA that they're going to stop funding projects that can't basically maintenance and maintain the facilities that they're building.
Right.
So what that means is when we build a state-of-the-art plant, we have to have the funding capabilities of maintaining that over decades. And that's the cost of doing business for things like that is expensive.
Any other questions? And so boiling it down too, between the alternatives, one is the hopeful acquisition of grant funding versus the bonding route.
Correct. Yeah.
And so again, boiling it down further is a roll of the dice versus more of a sure thing.
Right.
correct?
Yes.
So,
And you could always do phasing too, if you wanted to do just, you know, the 29% of alternative one for the cash funding, and a year down the road, see where you've gotten with any of those grant funding opportunities, and then do another phase to get up to where the total would have been the 47%.
Might be the more.
That's an option.
Yeah, possibly.
47% increase in.
Well, so if you did phasing, you could do one alternative that's just the 29, if you're assuming alternative one, the 29% would be the first phase. So cash funding, all of the 2.7, or finding grant funds that are available to fund that 2.7. And if you get further down the road and none of those grant funding opportunities are coming to fruition, then have another phase that would come into place a year later that would be another 20% or 18% that would get the total to the 47%.
Chad, you can kind of, then Chad or Jan, you can correct me if this is a wrong thought, but a number of years ago when we were preparing for the water tower replacement, we increased rates and we set up a water tower fund. We set up the means to be able to fund that. Then we got a large grant that carried a large amount for that. We were able to use that fund for other capital improvements. And the way I see it, that's an explanation of why our rates didn't increase for a period of, we've had where we've gone quite a few years where we haven't had any real significant increases, partly because we, with that grant funding, we were able to take those monies that we would have paid on bond and use for other capital improvements, use for other expenses. So we've gone quite a while without any major increases.
Right. And that you make, that's a good point too, because that water tower fund, you will see that on your breakdown of your cash balances. But that is not, that transfer is no longer included in your revenue requirements. I believe the last rate study had that transfer. It was, I think, $33,000 a year. But you're correct, that did help with your capital improvements because that money wasn't needed because you were able to grant fund that project.
We've used that money for the painting that we've done in previous years. We used it for cleaning and so forth.
Right.
So we weren't taking that, we were already collecting those dollars. So
Yeah.
we were able to use them in that regard. So I guess I look at that, if we phase in at the lower rate and we are successful with grants, and that could defer, delay the other increases farther by that success.
Yeah.
But the increase will get us into the better position on the grants.
Right.
Correct.
And I hate paying the extra money too. I have 3 women in my house. There's a lot of showers. So
I don't know what you mean.
you don't know anything about that, do you?
Nope.
I think it may be worthwhile to say out loud because, citizens at home may be watching this and I don't know if they have the numbers, it's not probably clear to them, but what we're talking about in terms of alternatives. And, I think it can be boiled down for the average citizen what the monthly increase would be to their monthly bill. And those were, I think, 4 numbers that we can easily throw out there. So, with the cash funding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong anywhere along the line here. So with the cash funding, alternative 1, you're talking about an average increase for a citizen of the city of $6.37 on their water bill. For alternative 2, you're talking about $4.38 increase.
Correct.
For the bond funding on alternative 1, you're talking about $10.32 on average. And with the alternative 2, you're talking about $8.33.
Correct.
And when we're mentioning these amounts, that's predicated on it's 4,000 gallons, right? 533
Correct,
cubic
yes.
feet. So if you're paying more than that, it may be a multiple. I mean, I know people pay like $100 or something.
Yeah.
So it's
it's based on an average bill.
Right.
I can help a little bit because I have my water bill in my hand. And my last water bill, we used 563 units or cubic feet.
Okay.
So that put the water charge at 38.25. So that put us a little bit above the average.
Right.
That's a slightly above average. That's a little bit above average for our bill. Usually, a lot of times it's down And I think it's just the days, where the days hit. Sometimes it's a little over 100, or, well, the total, my total bill's 162.23 with taxes and trash and sand and wastewater, which of course, one of the things to point out, we're not affecting wastewater rates in this conversation at all. So roughly, on that number of units is going to put it, what, $6, and at the 29% would raise the rate to 45 or so.
So yeah, so it would be
Right.
29%.
$45,
Yeah.
$46, yeah, on the 29%.
Yep.
So, just to put it in perspective, like I say, four people in the home, four people in the home, like I say,
Right.
my wife will hate me here, but three women.
Maybe she's not watching.
And, well, she probably is. I'll know when I get home.
About $12 per person per
Yeah.
month to use water.
Yeah. Which is, like I say, probably fits in with a lot of families with children and so forth.
Right.
Any other questions for Jessica? Jessica,
Okay.
thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, so once the council's made a decision, Jan or Steve know how to get a hold of me, so they can let me know and we can get you the rates for whatever alternative or changes that you want to make. So,
Appreciate that tremendously. All right. All right, department reports, just a few things here real quick. The shiny thing sitting in front of, between Tim and Jason, that's an award to the city, so kudos to all you guys. It's the
That's awesome.
Union City received the Entrepreneur of the Year from Randolph County United at the gala. And so they noted Vision Corner, and they noted housing initiatives, including Rock even that night. But quite an honor. There were only 3 awards given, and you had connections to 2 of them because Jim won Entrepreneur of the Year.
Oh, did he?
Yes, yes. So that was an awesome receipt, awesome award. And then the other one was, Reed.
Yeah.
Reed Health. Yeah, Reed Health was awarded, and rightly so. And their facility, brand new facility in Winchester, is just amazing. So anyway, it was a wonderful night. Couple more notes of interest. The United States Department of Agriculture will be in tomorrow. Actually, they're going to be doing a video of Union City. They want to do a video of some of the projects that we've accomplished and have in the works through our collaborative spirit, from the wastewater plant to Vision Corner to collaboration across state lines. So they're wanting to recognize us because they want to make this. They're doing an article and they want to do a video of Union City because they want to use it. They mentioned Putnam County and a few other areas that they wouldn't use us as an example. So that was pretty cool. Really appreciate that. Community Christmas. I want to give a huge shout out to fellow council member. Well, I shouldn't say fellow council, but council member Jason Brewer. And also on the Ohio side, Miss Cheyenne Tedrow, they come out as well as some other volunteers and helped at the park for Community Christmas. So big shout out to them, and also the school, the administration and a couple different student groups showed up, which was a huge help. Workhorse sent a volunteer group again on their dime, and was a huge help. And really appreciate them as well. And we've had a few other volunteers show up here and there too. So that's been a huge shot in the arm, because this is the time of year I always start developing night sweats, because we light, but believe it or not, we light next Friday. Not this coming Friday, but next Friday,
Yeah.
which does not seem possible. It's just insane that Thanksgiving's next week. And speaking of which, the community Thanksgiving at the school is next week. On the Tuesday, do I have that right? Tuesday night? Next Tuesday night. So not tomorrow night, but next Tuesday night is the community Thanksgiving. And it is a community Thanksgiving. Everyone is welcome. And so it is, if you've never had an opportunity to either attend that event or at least get to know something about it, it is spectacular. It's amazing. It's a gymnasium, absolutely plumb full of citizens gathering to have a meal together, just for Thanksgiving. That's pretty cool. That's pretty special. They have up just short of 1,000 folks, which is basically 25% of the entire population. So that's nuts. Let's see Indianapolis pull that off. So that being said, Jan, do you have anything?
The only thing I have is that we had our exit conference for our audit today, and everything went well. They didn't have any findings to report, so
Excellent.
they said we did great, and that's all I have.
Well, good job. Awesome.
When will we be able to see the report? Or?
They'll send it to you. I think they said, Brandon, did they say the end of next week? They would email it?
Yeah, I think with the holidays there may be a delay, but they said that it should be within the next week, week and a half.
They'll email it to you.
Okay, congratulations. That's huge. That's awesome. There's a reason why her light is on at 10:30 at night. Mercy.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback onto that with what Jan said. The auditors who were in said that it was actually unusual that we have that a city of our size has no findings. So
Wow.
it's kudos to Jan and her team. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Good blessing. Council members, Tito, we'll start with you.
Yeah, just a couple questions. Do we have an update on the soon-to-be Roots building on Columbia Street? I mean, we'd love to have them in town. Do we know when that's going to happen?
Update.
The most recent update that I have is that the food was ordered, and they're literally waiting on the food product and the supplies to arrive so that they can open. Everything's ready to go.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it could be soon. The other thing, I saw in the financials several charges for an EPA assessment grant made to BCA Environmental Consultants. These seem to be for environmental assessments of the buildings being demolished in downtown. Can you tell us more about what these environmental assessments are for?
That's a multi-year grant that has been in existence for a while, and any industrial property, any commercial type property that we believe may have some contamination or something, we can have that building evaluated and tested through the use of that grant. So it's an ongoing process.
It's a $300,000 grant we were awarded, I think it was.
Correct, and we're setting on about, I think, was that about 220,000 left? I think.
Good chunk.
It was $500,000
When would that have been?
grant.
When
I mean, $500,000.
Not that one, that was the BCA or
Oh, that-
the
okay, I'm
Brownfield
sorry.
grant was 300.
Yeah,
That was what, 3 years ago? 2 years ago? 4 years ago?
it was the black grant. the state was-
Last year, sorry.
Yeah, and it's a multi-year,
Yeah.
And this is a new one.
Okay.
yeah, and
So-
it'll run till we're out of money. So it'll take a few years for it to cycle through.
So it's not like specifically related to the buildings being demolished. We just decided that it'd be better to do an environmental.
No, we had every one of those buildings that we just demolished, we had them evaluated.
Right.
Using the Brownfield grant to make sure that any asbestos or any chemicals or lead or anything like that that was identified through that testing process was properly abated and dealt with.
Is there anything in danger or anything that we need to be?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
No, good question. Tim,
I don't have anything.
Jason.
Just, it's nice seeing all the Christmas lights go up through town, and it caught my eye for the first time, the lights on top of the Vision Corner.
Oh,
Pretty cool. Yeah.
Just a heads up on that. We've had those lights for some time. We actually acquired those lights when we got the lights to string them over the downtown, over the street. That's when we made the acquisition, but we just haven't had, it hasn't been the right timing to get them up. I'm gonna give a shout out that we got with Ryan Prinke, our city attorney, to draw up basically a waiver, if you will, because if we have the lights to line both sides of the street. So if building owners, I'm getting ready to reach out to building owners that if it's something they want done, but they have to sign a waiver to have it done. And then we would just continue it all the way down. So right now, we're just doing the buildings that are under our jurisdiction.
Okay, right.
For the
That's
time
nice.
being. So, thank you. Bob?
I don't have anything.
Brandon?
The only thing I had was Randolph County United. I don't know if citizens have heard or not, but there was an announcement that the CEO search has been completed,
Great
and
call
we
out.
have an announcement that our new CEO is Daniel Baker.
Yes.
And just a couple of things about him. He's current CEO of Always Home Custom Designs. They're in Winchester. He's also been in the past a small business consultant, and he was also in the Texas Air National Guard, and he has an MBA from Rice University. I haven't actually personally met him yet. I actually have a return phone call I need to make to him. He called me this afternoon, and I haven't had a chance to connect with him yet, but I think it would be nice if he's available maybe sometime to attend a council meeting and meet everybody, so I'll see if we can get that on the agenda.
I can add to that. I had dinner with him Thursday. He's coming in tomorrow. He does want to be at the council meeting before the end of the year to introduce himself.
Perfect.
So I will try to nail down that date and time for him.
Perfect.
So,
Great individual. I've had the fortune of knowing him for a little while now. He was a wonderful selection.
Good. That's good to hear.
Very good. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
hey, I got a couple things.
Yeah, I didn't forget you, because both of you are up to that.
First, fire hydrants. So last year you guys kind of approved the replacement schedule plan of purchasing 6 fire hydrants a year. We had a terrible time with supply chain issues getting fire hydrants. Plus we have made a change to the thread cut of our fire hydrants. We're going to national standard instead of Dayton thread, and we hope that that's going to make acquiring the hydrants quicker and a lot less painful. But I would just, my question now is, do you want to continue with that process of purchasing 6 every year and have the water department continue with that replacement cycle? Our hydrants are old. They're, we've had 3 of them fail in the last 12 months, and it's time to either jump in on board with that process or slow down, because Brad's ready to get more hydrants ordered, because we'll have all 6 of them that we got for 2022 installed here before probably December. So
Refresh our memory, how many hydrants are in town, roughly?
about 185, I believe. Well, it's more than that now because we just put 6 in the housing development, so.
Okay.
How many need to be replaced? What was the replacement schedule like? You were talking about 6 a year.
Brad was feeling like 6 per year in his budget was manageable just with the budget dollars. So that was kind of what he was targeting. I don't think all 185 or 189, whatever that number is, needs to be replaced, because some of them are newer hydrants.
But if you figure 6
but-
of them a year, that's once
Yeah,
every 30 years.
Yeah, it's a long, drawn out process. Brad just wants to know if he needs to start getting the quotes so we can get them ordered shortly after the first of the year, or if you guys want to kind of slow down on that thought process. So I told him I
Why
would
would we
ask.
slow?
Huh?
I mean, I would think we want to accelerate, right? If we have fire hydrants literally.
Talking to a fire chief that's retiring, yes, you want to accelerate. So, I think allowing Brad to work the plan that he has kind of mapped out in his head, I think that's the right thing to do. But,
Yeah.
if you guys want to continue, I will make sure that we have the quotes and you guys can approve them so that right after January we can get them ordered, because there is going to be a lag time for them to come in.
I think it makes sense to
Yeah.
continue with it.
I agree.
I even think that if we identify that we have a need for more than that, within reason, if they identify that there's, at some point that there's a couple more, then maybe we can be flexible and
I can go with that.
go more.
Have we always had a replacement schedule like this, 6 a year, or is it just like if something's broke, we fix
No,
it kind of thing?
it's been maintenance and repair, and only if we absolutely have to, we replace one. There's been two things against us. Number one, when our forefathers put the infrastructure in, they didn't put valves before and after the hydrant, which makes it almost impossible for us to change them. So we have to hire a contractor to come in, do line stops, and then you got boil orders and all these things that play into the process. But what we're doing in this replacement cycle is putting the line stops in regardless. And so we're going to be able to shut them down and maintain them in a more efficient manner moving forward, because we won't have to, we can just isolate that hydrant and shut it down and not interfere with the rest of the water main. So that's why in Brad's budget, he picked the number 6, because there's extra work that's got to be done to have these 6
Right.
installed.
The amount that it takes.
He felt like he could do it through budget process.
So do we have a consensus for Brad to proceed?
I agree
Yeah.
with that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. I heard at least 3 yeses or nods.
Yes.
So it's all for, okay.
Okay, and then this last thing, you and I didn't get a talk. I didn't think about it, but we had to fire Door and Associates on Monday. So, of last week, they've had 10 days to demobilize, so they'll be leaving town probably Wednesday. So we will be starting dismantling their fencing tomorrow and replacing it with our fencing, and the demolition project will have to go through a complete rebidding process for Okra. So this is not the news that we wanted, but we have navigated so many little nuances with this contractor that it's, I mean, if you want to know exactly, I can go into it in private, but it's been an uphill push to get to where we are right now.
So with the
It's
work that's
taken
already been
forever.
done, is it possible that somebody locally could do the remainder of the work?
Potentially, we're very confident that because what was so challenging about this demo was the attachment at 113 and 115, because that was just a 3-brick common wall instead of a 6-brick. Since that demo is down, we now have just the build back and backfill to worry about at that location. Both of those projects theoretically could be managed by local contractors very efficiently, I would hope. They've got 228 completely done. It's passed all of its inspections and all of its tests, so that one's already done and gone. And then 339, the old A&P building, we have the filling station and the section of the A&P with a basement left to demo, and then breaking up the footer and foundation and backfilling that space and cleaning it up. So I do believe that our local contractors have a legitimate shot at stepping up and finishing these projects in a pretty quick fashion, but because of the grant funding that we've received, it has to go through a complete bid process. We tried and pushed every button we can do to just hire somebody right away and just get it done without the delay, but we're probably looking at, I'm going to say, a 3 to 6 week delay in work stoppage, because we've got holidays and things that are going to come into play with this process. So.
But the underlying factor in all this is to have it done right. That's what's critical, because we're at a critical juncture with this build back wall and everything. That needs to be done right. Because the city has seen what happens, i.e. the corner, across from where Joe's Corner Florist used to sit, next to Motley Shop. That was not done correctly. And we suffered with that for years. The ground constantly sinking, so we're at a critical stage. So
that's a little bit of bad news, but we do have a workaround. We're going after their performance bond, their liability insurance, and their payment bond. Hopefully we still come out of this at a break-even point. That's the goal. BCA, our engineer on the project, believes that that's still attainable. Doran Associates, BCA is identifying that approximately 40% of the work has been completed. So Door's entitled to a portion of the funding. The city attorney, Chad, myself, and anybody else that wants to be involved can participate in those conversations, but it's a daunting process. So, and that's all I got.
The floor is yours, Josiah.
Okay. So great to be back for the second time, I guess, as I'm not here very many times. So a couple things as far as what's going on at our school. So obviously there's been news about the U.S. history class of Mr. Perkins. He's been raising money for the statue that's being built in town. So far he has raised up to $1,700 for that statue. So doing really great work in there. Also some neat things that happened over this past weekend. We had our senior class play this past weekend, which it was I believe everyone had a very enjoyable time as they watched us. I happened to be one of the cast members within that play, but it seemed like that everyone that came had an enjoyable time, and that hope that we can continue to do as great as we do. Also, speaking of plays, the middle school is also doing a play, but their play, I believe, is on Wednesday night of this week. I don't have an exact time of when that is, and plus it's also kind of iffy on whether he's even on Wednesday or not, because they seem to be kind of short-handed on some cast members and stuff like that, because we do happen to be a very small school as compared to other communities, but we do as much as we can, and I think it's great. With winter coming along, which means that winter season of sports is coming along. As of tonight, they are having their camera night, which is gathering of a bunch of all the sports teams for this season, and taking a bunch of photos of all the teams, and just getting a bunch of group photos of all the classes that are in sports and whatnot. With the focus on sports, this past weekend on Saturday, our girls basketball team defeated Newcastle when they went over there. Not exactly sure what the score was, but you can look that up on the website. Also, this is a thing that happened a while back. As far as our FCA program that we have at our school, it has we did the Samaritan's Purse project thing, where a bunch of students from the school brought in gifts in relative to those who are in need and who are like homeless, that live very far away, and so we had a bunch of shoe boxes that were made filled with gifts for those children. So, and then there's also more things that FCA are doing is they're trying to have it to where every month that they're going to have some sort of event to build the school's morale, and try to get our school community all together, whether it is through K.I.S.S. and whatnot, as that is what the Fellowship of Christian Athletes is based on. And then also another note, as Chad mentioned before, the community Thanksgiving is next Tuesday, but also following that week, we do have our Thanksgiving break at our school, Wednesday through Friday, and So it'll be a time for families to get together and enjoy Thanksgiving and enjoy the holidays. And I think it'll be a great time for all those families that can do that. That is mostly what I have from our school.
Josiah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good.
So with the
Just wanted
statue, the statue, how much are we anticipating that is going to cost total?
10,000.
10,000.
What statue is it?
Governor
Governor
Isaac
Gray.
P. Gray for the entrance of the housing development.
Also, just wanted to say I have a daughter in the K.I.S.S middle school play, and it's planned for 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've learned that place.
So you're still fundraising for the statue, right? So if somebody
Yes.
is watching and they want to donate, how could they potentially do that?
I believe I'm not one of those people that is in that class that is
Okay.
fundraising that, but from what I've seen, I think they've had several fundraisers where they've had like fundraisers that they you can buy treats or stuff. They're doing it through other companies and stuff that you can order stuff from them, and then they'll get profit from those fundraising companies and whatnot.
So if somebody wanted to make just a cash donation, they could reach out to, is there a couple of point people, like Mr.
one-
Purdon?
City.
So-
Mr. Purdon.
Mr. Purdon is a good person to go to. Most of the junior class that is within his history class is also good options.
They're doing a local crowdfunding campaign called
Yeah.
Rally Around Us, and I will contact Mr. Purdon tomorrow and I'll have it put on the website.
Great.
Good job again, guys. Thank you. We have no business and new business. Going back to what we had with Jessica, the water rate increase. You'd like, basically, objective would be to land on what we think would be the best alternative, and
Yeah, I don't know if they want some time to think about it, like Jessica said, and we could revisit it.
Table at the next meeting.
Yeah.
So what's the
You guys-
timeline where you need an answer? I mean, or is there one? I mean,
Sooner than later is what,
Yeah, probably
yeah.
not.
So, I mean, if you guys want to have a couple weeks to mull this over and
Question
Yes.
about that. Do we have anything in terms of prospective grant funding identified?
SRF through rural development is probably our best bet right now,
Yeah.
is it not?
I know SRF is continually coming out with, because there's so much federal money that's being put through the pipeline right now, and they're funneling that into different grant specific, and they haven't come out with all the details on that. So I know it's changing, and probably more to come throughout the next year. I know the one we've heard a lot about lately is just for the main improvements, and a lot of those grants, they look at your medium household income, they look for disadvantaged communities, look at the census tracts and what the medium household income is within those census tracts, and we'll fund a portion of like the lead line replacements and those kind of things. But we haven't heard anything from a treatment plant perspective yet. Most of it has been lead lines or water main replacements so far.
So those would be grants for lead line replacement, or just allocations?
Some of them are grants, some of them are matching. It depends which program, and if you qualify, where you qualify in the different the different information, the tiers and what you hit. Like, so I know I had one community that they actually delayed their funding earlier this year because the grants information was just coming out, and they were able to get like 50% of the project funded from a grant. And so it was just a 0% forgive, and then there's some forgivable bands. So it'd be outstanding to the community for 3 to 5 years, but then they would forgive it upon the final maturity date. But yeah, they're always changing how they're gonna apply those.
It's a moving target.
So, yeah.
But yeah, to answer your question, yes, that's what we're pursuing vigorously right now with that and the industrial road out there. So
No, we don't really want to. Do we want to go into that? We don't want to go into that. Do we want to go into that?
Well, I mean, nobody wants to go with
Nobody
that.
wants, no,
We
that's
don't
not
have
the
to
design.
decide that right now.
No,
Right.
no,
Right now, I mean, I like her idea where we can do, an increase now.
The
Because
modest
we're gonna have
increase.
to do an increase.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get around that.
Right.
Mhm.
Do a
I don't care
modest
how much
increase.
grant funding you get, we still have to do an
Yep.
increase.
Yep.
So you could decide on that, and then you could see how it goes, and like she said, do a phase 2 if we
Yeah.
don't get the funding that we thought we were hoping to get.
Exactly. I think that's the most prudent route.
Because right now, all SRF is really saying is there's gonna be different buckets and time periods, and it's like 14 million, but you have no information on what programs they're going to, other than the total dollar amount.
14 million for the state?
Yes,
Wow, that's a lot.
yeah. So, well, that's just one number, like one program. I don't have we've done a lot of presentations. Baker Tilly itself has done a lot of presentations, so I don't have the number in front of me. But it's more than that. It's more than 14 million
Yeah,
in
it will be.
total.
So we'll go ahead and have that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
Ordinance number 2022-15, which is the ordinance establishing an allocation fund. I can read it. That's on the first reading.
I was gonna say, if you want, I could send Jan that, the presentation I can find with what SRF has coming for.
Oh, that'd be
grants in the
great.
pipeline.
Sure,
If you want me to- I can send you that.
Yeah, that'd be
So
great.
you have it for the next meeting.
Thank you.
It's like a PowerPoint or something?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you forward that to us, please?
Yeah.
Super. This is on the first reading only.
This is just a creation of the fund so we can put our tax revenue, or our TIF revenue in from the industrial park. Because we're getting revenue from that now, and I have to put it somewhere.
It's actually producing revenue now, so that's a huge
Yeah.
plus.
That's awesome.
Any questions? If not, I would entertain a motion for approval.
I move that we adopt ordinance 2022-15, ordinance establishing an allocation fund on first reading.
We have a first and we have a second.
I'll second.
I think Bob by hair.
Yep.
Jan, if you would, roll call vote.
Brandon Elmore,
Yes.
Bob Leahy.
Yes.
Jason Brewer.
Yes.
Tim Heiss.
Yes.
Peter Freed.
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-16, which is the elected official salary ordinance. This is also in the first reading. See here, there's no increases for myself or the council.
Tragically.
Sorry, guys.
Boo.
But then the clerk treasurer, there is an increase for clerk treasurer, rightly so. I actually fought for more. I was actually turned down by our clerk treasurer. A bizarre world. And then, I don't remember, is the city
Didn't
judge?
increase anything else.
Okay, so that's the only
The
increase
judge.
then you're looking at is for the clerk treasurer. So do we have any questions or comment? If not, I would entertain a motion for approval on the first reading.
I move that we adopt ordinance number 2022-16 by title only.
We have a first, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Jan, once again, if you would, roll call vote.
Brandon Elmore,
Yes.
Bob Leahy.
Yes.
Jason Brewer.
Yes.
Tim Heiss.
Yes.
Peter Freed.
Yes.
And then the last one is the grant application or through a facade grant program from the Antique Mall, which is the Kirschbaum building is what most folks know it as. Do we have any thoughts, questions, comments on that?
The Kirschbaum is the Columbia and Pearl
Correct.
North.
Antique
Mall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Is that our only 3-story building downtown? Is that right?
So,
Yeah.
Well, the Motley Shop's 3-story.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. Gotcha.
that's
That's right. Definitely one of our more prominent structures.
Yeah.
If there are no questions, I would entertain a motion for approval.
I'll move we approve the facade grant for the antique mall as it's presented.
We have a fir-
You might as well read the totals.
Oh, yeah.
The project estimate is $8,500. The amount requested is $250.
I'll second. Second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The application approved. Do we have any visitors wishing to address the council? If not, the date of our next council meeting will be Monday, November 28th. That will be after post-Thanksgiving already, amazingly. At 6 p.m. Board of Works will be that same day at 1 p.m. I would hereby entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
We're first, we have a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Meeting adjourned.